Party.
Monsieur le Président, nous avons appris hier qu'Énergie Nouveau-Brunswick négocie avec Ontario Power Generation pour lui vendre une participation dans Point-la-Pro. Lors de la réunion des comptes publics en janvier, on m'a dit que l'ancien collègue d'Irving de Premier ministre, Bob Uden, avait été embauché par le ministre de l'Énergie pour fournir des conseils stratégiques sur Énergie Nouveau-Brunswick et que, selon son contrat, il travaillerait à partir du bureau du Premier ministre. Il a peut-être conseillé au Premier ministre de vendre les centrales électriques d'Énergie Nouveau-Brunswick. Ma question s'adresse au Premier ministre. Depuis combien de temps est-il au courant de ces négociations visant à fournir à OPG une participation financière dans Point-la-Pro et pourquoi ne les a-t-il pas révélées au public?
The Honourable the Premier.
So, Mr. Speaker, this spoken from someone that probably never has had a negotiation for a long time in all the issues, Mr. Speaker. When you're negotiating with big companies, you don't publicize it, you don't put it on the smoke. But the point of negotiations is well overstated here, Mr. Speaker, because we don't know what this is going to look like at the end of the day. What we know is we need a partnership to help move energy forward in this province. Not necessarily any different than what we have with how we're going to manage Mactaquac, Mr. Speaker. Why, they may ask, why do we need Hydro-Quebec to help us refurbish that dam? Well, they've done it before, over and over again, Mr. Speaker. That's why you bring in expertise for help. I've said over and over again here that OPG have extensive experience in the nuclear industry, Mr. Speaker. We have one reactor, one operation. So, Mr. Speaker, it's unfortunate that there's so narrow the focus here, but I can appreciate not being in a position that over the years, having exposure to big corporate deals, then there's a reluctance to say, oh, well, we can do it on our own. Well, I think, Mr. Speaker, we all have lessons to learn from a lot of people.
Member for Fredericton-South and Leader of Party.
Mr. Speaker, last night a commentary was posted on the websites of Brunswick News and l'Acadie Nouvelle recommending that government sell off Point-la-Pro, the Mactaquac Dam and Belledune, then buy the power back from the new owners. Coincidence? I think not. Clearly, this government has a strategic plan for the future of our public utility that they're not telling us about. MB Power belongs to the people of this province, Mr. Speaker, and its assets are public assets. The Premier is not running a corporation negotiating deals with other corporations. He's running the province, Mr. Speaker. It's a different matter. So it's the Premier's responsibility to be up front with New Brunswickers before deals are done. Will the Premier hold a press briefing this afternoon so he can explain to New Brunswickers his plan for the future of our electrical utility and our assets?
The Honourable the Premier.
So, Mr. Speaker, I think the Leader of the Green Party should talk to the member opposite here, because one thinks and one surmises and one knows, Mr. Speaker. So the two of them could probably come up with a path forward that they all can surmise it could be right, maybe. So, Mr. Speaker, we are working on a long-term strategy with NB Power, and we will do that strategy in the best interest of consumers and ensures that we have the best and the lowest rate for consumers, Mr. Speaker. But we're living in a time of increased energy costs. Energy costs that are increased because of federal policies, Mr. Speaker. We know there's an issue in Europe, and we can be part of that solution. And there's also energy costs here, unlike the U.S., that we have here in New Brunswick because we have a denial of the transition opportunities we have right here in New Brunswick to make the difference. So, Mr. Speaker, while other countries, particularly the U.S., are using, or Norway as an example, are using traditional fuels to generate revenue, to do the research and development needed to keep energy costs low for our consumers, we're sitting there thinking about it. Well, Mr. Speaker, this side of the House, we're not thinking about it, we're doing about it.
Mr. Speaker, the Premier is just icing the puck here. Before he puts MB Power's generating assets in a yard sale this spring, he needs to explain to New Brunswickers what he is doing and why. This is a serious matter with huge implications for the province. He's not running a corporation negotiating corporate deals. He's running a province. It's a public body, Mr. Speaker, not a private body. These are publicly owned assets operated by a public utility. In the case of Point-la-Pro, it's responsible for 2/3 of MB Power's $5 billion debt. MB Power's principal source of revenue is from what? Power sales, from its power plants. If they're sold, MB Power's debt will fall on the taxpayers. Once again, I ask the Premier, will he come clean with New Brunswickers and hold a news conference this afternoon to explain what he plans to do with MB Power and its $5 billion debt?
The Honourable the Premier.
So, Mr. Speaker, isn't it interesting? So at least there's acknowledgement that there's some issue around a $5 billion debt. That's progress. Coming from the leader of the Green Party, that is progress, Mr. Speaker. Because there's usually no acknowledgement of anything to do with debt load. And I always wonder about how he manages his household. So, Mr. Speaker, in this scenario, what we're going forward here with is looking at what's the best way for keeping prices down for consumers. And, Mr. Speaker, I guess to think about us not doing deals that are important for us to get the lowest prices and us not using business principles in order to ensure we get best prices for service and delivery to consumers, I mean, it's kind of, to me, it's kind of a thoughtless exercise to say we don't need to think about that in those terms. Mr. Speaker, when we deal with anyone, Hydro-Quebec, OPG, these big players, Mr. Speaker, they can eat our lunch. We're going to make sure that doesn't happen. That's why we're working with NB Power, and we will get the best deal for the people of this province because we know how to negotiate the best deal, Mr. Speaker. That's the difference.